Well, Jon Revett, that's how you say it, right?
Yes, it is.
Thanks for being on the show. Of
course.
Really appreciate it. I want to get started with your background in art.
All right. Well, I've always been an artist. I was born this way, as they say. But in high school, I remember very clearly walking into a freshman art class and being, this is what's for me. This is what I want to do. And then I kind of always made art things. Didn't really realize that art school was an option. And so I kind of went my own way. Maybe lived in a van for a while and toured the country, and then
True artist.
Yeah. And then came back to Amarillo and got a job with Stanley Marsh. And my job was to put up the signs around Amarillo, and so that really kind of
That was you.
It wasn't just me. There was a crew of us. There was a lot of us, and I did it for about 3 summers. And then I ended up being hired by the family to work on the ranch, and I was taken out to Amarillo Ramp, which is a sculpture by Robert Smithson. And really didn't understand it, but thought if I wanted to be an artist, I probably should understand why this is art. And that was kind of the beginning of the whole process.
So was this a group that was basically focused just on art around Stanley Marsh's ideas, or how did that evolve?
We like to frame it as an artist collective. So we were called the Dynamite Museum, and it was a fluctuation. I think definitely Stanley was the center of it, but a lot of decisions were collaborative. Obviously we know where the money came from, but we did have discussions about the signs, and people would come out with lines of poetry and things like this. So it was a very collaborative experience.
Okay.
And there was a functioning art studio in the office, so there were some other artists who worked there at the time.
And this was right about what time?
90s, early 90s.
Early
92,
90s.
Yeah, 92, 94.
So you've been a professor of art here for quite a while. How did that evolve from this project to
So basically,
A&M?
after I decided I needed to learn more about art, I actually enrolled at Amarillo College, and that would have probably been around 1997, 96. I started an underground art gallery called Yellow City Art that was also a punk rock club.
Cool.
That ran for about 3 years. I finished my degree at Amarillo College, and then I came to WT as an undergrad in 2001, and then haven't left since. No, I've left a few times, but I've come back and sort of climbed through the ranks. The unique thing about me coming back to WT was every time I came back, I kind of came back in 3 different phases. It was a different faculty each time.
Okay.
And so I kind of got a diverse exposure to ways of thinking and making.
So Amarillo art. You're a native, so
More or less. I moved here on my 13th birthday. So
okay, you're a native.
depends who you talk. If you talk to natives, they don't say that. Chip's looking at me like I'm not. Yeah. So yeah.
So you've seen an evolution of art. How do you see it? How do you see the evolution of art from your time kind of getting into it heavy back in the day to now?
Well, I think I see it from a different viewpoint because I'm now in a place of leadership, and a lot of the people. I'm friends with the curators at most museums, and so all that thing that was a mystery to me, now I've seen the other side behind the curtain, so to see. So I see it more from the operational standpoint now. I also see it. But I've always seen it as a necessity to our town and to our culture, which is why I started an underground gallery. I never made money, but I had
True artist, like I said.
Exactly. We didn't do it for the money. I learned later that is something you have to do. So, but I do think it's something that I think the Amarillo art scene has fluctuated. And literally, I was just on a Zoom call with Glass Tire, and Amy Von Lintel and I are on a panel next week down in in Lubbock, and we are talking to people in Lubbock and Abilene about the art scene, and we all kind of tried to come up with what the idea of Panhandle art is. And we didn't really have a succinct definition, but we do realize that a lot of us operate in the same manner, meaning we don't get a lot of exposure to high art or things here. We don't get a lot of opportunity, and so if we want something, we have to make it ourselves. And so I think that's kind of the background and the backbone of what we do here is if you want something, you do it yourself. And that's what I spend a lot of time telling my students, like, it isn't, it's easy to do homework.
Yeah.
Go out and do this without homework or without somebody telling you
So
to do
correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just maybe an outsider's view from the outside looking in. It seems like this area, Texas Panhandle, Amarillo, has gained some momentum when it comes to art and artists in the area, and there's a lot of talented ones that come
Well, I think it is that self-determination. You know, I've had lots of, in fact, several of the people from the Dynamite Museum went on to art careers, and they moved to major markets like Chicago and New York City and LA, and they are thriving in those places because of that, I think, self-determination. It wasn't just handed to them. They had to learn to fight for it or work for it. And I think that definitely, that scrappy spirit that we have here is really what drives, I think, the art scene.
Check out GoRoute66 YouTube and TikTok for more great videos and interviews.
Do you find a lot of that art is built in that kind of hometown feel, or does it come from what their experiences here that they take out into the world?
Well, I think you know, art is influenced by your environment. Doesn't matter who you are, and I think everyone takes different aspects of that. And I think, yes, there are some people who are influenced by the landscapes or or what we'll call the Western scene. But I also think that it doesn't just have to be that anymore. I think culture has changed enough, and we have enough exposure.
Pretty diverse.
Yeah, you can see a bigger picture of things. So. And this is something that I say a lot, is that, you know, Western art isn't just cowboys and horses. It also can be any art made in the West. So we are, by that definition, Western artists.
Okay, so let's go ahead and shift to Stanley Marsh.
All right.
So
yay, you know.
let's talk a little bit about him and his art
Yeah.
in the Texas Panhandle.
Well, he's more of a patron. He did actually make art. He made some really weird paintings, but he was more of a patron. So he was very intrigued by art people and art scenes. And again, if you knew Stanley or if you've heard the stories, Stanley was famous for saying, "Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story." And so,
I can understand that.
Yeah, so there's some vague, but the kind of the main story that kind of reoccurs is that Stanley actually went to New York City in the 60s and kind of, I don't know if he actually met Andy Warhol, but kind of got in that orbit around the factory and met some artists working there.
Okay.
Specifically like Claes Oldenburg and John Chamberlain, and then kind of wanted to bring that back here. So I think he
that inspired him a little.
Yeah. I think he wanted to create his own salon, and I do think he tried to make some art, since there's the famous soft pool table that he made. But then he actually had this artist named John Chamberlain come here, who is world famous for making these crushed car sculptures. And he worked here in the summers from 1972 to 1975. And when he was here, then other artists started getting the word coming through. That's literally
This is what's going on.
Yeah, I have the first letter from Ant Farm to Stanley Marsh, where they're like, "Hey, we heard about this," and they talk about Chamberlain, and they see this, and they understand that this is person out here is doing this. We talk about Robert Smithson, and Robert Smithson heard through the grapevine that there was this wealthy patron in the Panhandle who was supporting art projects.
So they just flocked.
Yeah. Well, I think they go to where money is. That's what it is. And I think, you know, he did allow people to do things on their own terms.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I think that was a very unique time. I think the early 70s in Amarillo were probably, I would love to have a time machine to go back and see what was going on.
So let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Cadillac Ranch. Where did the inspiration for this particular idea come from?
This is really funny because I just wrote an article about it saying that it was dolphins, and then the two living members of the ant farm came back to me and said, "Well, it's not that, and it's this." So I think it was a confluence of things. So the ant farm at the time was artist named Doug Michaels, Hudson Marquez, and Chip Lord. And Doug Michaels has passed away, but he is the one who talked about the influence being dolphins. And
Wow.
it's a long story.
Dolphins in the Panhandle.
Yeah, well, he kind of went off. Well, and they likened the plains to the ocean, and it's like looking across an ocean, and they love that idea.
Okay,
and
I see that.
The true inspiration of Cadillac Ranch is the tail fin. It tracks the rise and the
fins.
fall of the tail fin,
Yeah.
so it makes dolphins a natural fit. However, Chip Lord was always obsessed with cars, always obsessed with car culture. And so his influence comes from this obsession with automobiles. And Hudson actually there's a very famous image from, I cannot remember the book, but it's from the 30s. It's like the shape of automobiles or the design of automobiles. And it's a cutout of the tail fins of the Cadillac, almost like what the Cadillac Ranch looks like. And Hudson Marquez actually showed me a painting he made of that in 1971.
So it's kind of a combination maybe
Yeah.
of ideas. And now, was that proposed? Like this is what it is from the group? This is what we want to do.
So this is really fascinating. And so what I learned through this, I got access to all of the letters, the correspondence between Stanley and the art firm, which basically started in late 1972 till June of 1974 when it was actually executed. And there's a lot of random ideas going back and forth, but somewhere around the summer, I think it was in the December of 73, there was an art opening in Houston for the ant farm that Stanley attended. And I think somewhere in those conversations is really when the idea of the Cadillac Ranch began to crystallize.
So Cadillacs, it was purposeful. Because of the tail fins.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Oh no, that's what they were documenting, and the tail fins were influenced by the P-38 bomber, and it kind of went up, and they like to say it had a function, but it was really a design element.
Okay. And then Route 66, was that intentional?
Yes, 100%. I think they wanted to be next to the mother road.
Digging into car culture, things like that?
Yep.
Okay. How was it received by the area at the time? I've heard some varying
I can't
accounts.
say, but I think people liked it. I think that was just par for course. I mean,
as far as Stanley Marsh projects
I mean, and that's the thing is I think everyone thinks it's a Stanley Marsh thing, but it's actually an ant farm thing that Stanley just paid for.
Yes.
So I'm sure people here were like, oh, Stanley just being weird again. But I mean, it was intentionally not advertised, and it was intentionally left sort of just out in the middle of the field. So anyone driving down Route 66 would just look and be like, what is this in the field? I mean, even today, there's no signage for it. There's no nothing.
Don't need it now.
Yeah, well, but it's not, and they don't advertise it, and they don't talk about it, so it's all kind of this really amazing phenomenon where it's word of mouth. And according to a study, I haven't seen the actual study, but they did a marketing research study a couple years back, and they say 1 million people a year leave their cars and walk to Cadillac Ranch.
That would not surprise me at all. So I've seen some past interviews with Stanley Marsh talking about Cadillac Ranch, and he's all over the place with it. And he's even admitted to, I just make up why 100%. This is out here. Was that just part of his personality, or was it part of Cadillac Ranch specifically?
I think they like to be pranksters. I think the ant farm probably were more serious on a normal basis. I think they kind of adapted to their audience and worked with it. I mean, they did talk about trying to put a vitrine around it or wrap it in barbed wire so people couldn't get so much access to it. But I think once they realized that public interaction component started, which is basically the spray painting.
That's what I was going to lead to.
Yeah, is they now see it kind of as the public sculpture. It's still theirs. They still technically own it.
It's an evolving piece of art, right?
Yeah.
And so was that always the intention, or when they put it in the ground, they were like, oh, this is how it could evolve?
Yeah, they didn't have any idea. I mean, I think they did think about preservation, but I mean, out of Chip Lord's mouth, he was like, we were so happy to get the cars in the ground. We didn't really think much about.
How was that process? Getting these vehicles here and then in the ground.
So they bought them all locally. They bought all 10 Cadillacs for $3,000, and I think they had actually got an extra one. And some worked, some didn't. Some were really nice, some were not. But they literally either drove or pushed. They dug up what looked like a grave. They pushed the car in, dumped concrete, and then pushed the next one and pushed the next one in. And then since then it's been moved. But they it was a pretty simple process. And in fact, there you go. That's the picture of them.
That's part of it.
That's the first car.
I mean, that's a good looking Cadillac.
Yeah.
What are the year models?
Do you know? It's from 1949 to 1963, so it is
pretty
successive,
iconic era.
But I have a list of actual numbers. I just don't know it off the top of my head.
So is there any kind of preservation effort, or by this time it is what it is?
It is what it is. Now I've had conversations about ideas for preservation, but nothing has been put into place. And right now, the ant farm says that it's okay if it just falls into the ground. Now, if we
rise and fall.
Well, exactly. I think if we could find money to save it and do something special, I think that would be an option. But right now, it is what it is.
So Stanley Marsh's opinion of this project in particular, how did his opinion of this particular piece, Cadillac Ranch, evolve over the years until he passed away? Did it change?
No, I don't think so. I think actually he probably so Robert Smithson, who is the artist who did Amarillo Ramp that I talked about, had this philosophy of entropy, which a lot of people take as the idea of erosion or degradation. The entropy is from the second law of thermodynamics, and I won't nerd out on what that means. But it means that everything moves towards equilibrium, so things are just going to fall apart. And so I think that Stanley took Robert Smithson's philosophy and applied it to Cadillac Ranch. He kind of liked it doing what it was going to do. I think he liked it as being a very famous thing, and I think he was all about, you know, just the fame and the popularity.
So what does Cadillac Ranch mean to the Texas Panhandle right now and in culture here? What does it mean?
I think again, the article I titled is The Belt Buckle of Route 66, and I think it puts us on the map as a cultural place. I think it marks us as something important. I think it's transcended Stanley Marsh. I think it's transcended the ant farm. And we're grateful that they put this here, but I do think it says you're in somewhere new. You're in some place you don't expect things to happen. And I think it teaches people to come here with a new look at the culture. Because most people think Amarillo is a drive-through town or a flyover country, as they like to call it. And I think it gives us a little bit of character.
I think, yeah, as soon as you're coming into town, you have to kind of do a double take. Said, what am I in for?
Yeah,
in this part of the country,
Exactly. Yep.
Good for good or bad,
Yep.
you know. So, as a standalone piece of art, how do you think it stands in American culture overall as a whole?
Oh, I think it's one of the most important American works of art. At the time, and this is really unique because this just started coming back as an echo. It was put in right after the OPEC oil embargoes. And so they were actually thinking about gas prices getting expensive. And you've seen all those images of the 70s of the long lines of empty cars at gas stations. This was put in right after that ended. And so I don't know if they were talking about the rise and fall of cars because of this, but they were definitely drawing attention to it. And now, as gas prices rise again, not because of an oil embargo, but because of a war, I think it is drawing attention to, are these giant American gas-guzzling cars going to go the way of the dinosaur? Right. Or are they going to go somewhere else? Or at least it gives us an opportunity to discuss that and give a better thought about how we're going to proceed as a culture with our cars and our vehicles. Because it is awesome to be an American and have a vehicle. I just bought a brand new Suburban. And I love driving it, but I do not love filling it up.
I know.
So,
that's the paradox,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. And so I think it's a good discussion point. And I think it allows us to discuss our culture where we are right now. And I think what opinion you have it is how you view the culture we're in. So
it's ever changing, obviously, and I think this is just an iconic piece of art, and obviously iconic for the Texas Panhandle. Jon, thanks for visiting with us on GoRoute66 Stories. This was fantastic and fascinating.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Want to see more videos about awesome places along Route 66? Head to GoRoute66.com and click on videos.